Once you're ready to begin a survey, go ahead and go into the PocketTopo software. If you go to menu, there's several options you can set, including things like the units. You can use metric or imperial units. There are a couple other things in the options menu, including this smart function and the title bar. The title bar is just the top of the column here. I don't really think there's a reason to turn that off. The smart function, what it does is it looks for 3 identical or nearly identical survey measurements, and if it sees that, then it identifies that as a survey shot as opposed to a splay shot, and it'll automatically increment the survey station. So I generally leave that enabled. To start a new survey, you go to Menu, File, and New Cave. That'll basically clear any data that's in memory. So if you have a file you've been working on and you want to keep that data, make sure you save it first. If you click on New Cave, it'll open up a new file. The first thing I do once I open a new file is go back into Menu, File, and then save it so that I can name it, and you can choose a directory. One thing I've found with PocketTopo is that you can't bury files too deep in a directory. You can have it sort of in the main directory. So let's just call this test, for example. You can have it in the main memory or maybe one folder down. So you can choose a folder. I have one called Surveys that's in main memory, or you can put it on your SD card, but it doesn't have the ability to look for surveys that are below that first menu level. If you move surveys into a folder and you bury it more than one level deep and you go to open a file, you won't be able to find it. So it has to be either in the main directory or, again, one level down. From here you can begin your survey, and if you haven't established a connection, you can go to Bluetooth and connect, again, assuming you've already paired and set up a COM port with the device so it's flashing. You just want to be careful. If there's any data previously stored on the disto-x, it'll start to download that data. So if you don't need that data, you don't want that data as part of your new survey, then before you connect, you want to press the clear and units button, hold that for 2 seconds, and it'll clear the memory. It'll erase any data out of the memory. Now that communication is established, as your instrument reader begins to take measurements, the data should download straight to the PocketTopo software. It can read the device if it's within 10 to 20 feet. I know ideally they claim that Bluetooth has a range of about 30 feet, but I find once you get 10 or 15 feet away from the device, you lose that connection, and you can reestablish it later. You can always record data on the disto-x and then reestablish connection later and collect that data. Any data that's measured from the disto-x will be stored locally, and when you reconnect, it'll download. So I've collected a series of shots here that just for example purposes, and in each case I've done 3 nearly identical measurements, and again, with the smart function turned on, it recognizes those as shots. And so it starts from station 1.0, and then the 2 station is 1.1, and then 1.1 to 1.2, and so the software will automatically increase the station by 1 number for each new shot. And this station naming convention is taken from Topo Robot. There's basically 2 numbers. So you see 1.0. The first number is the survey designation. The second number is the station designation. So this is sort of equivalent to, say, an A survey. So this would be A0, A1, A1 to A2, A2 to A3, and so on, like is more common in the US. And there's no other naming convention available in PocketTopo. So what I do is, if I'm doing an A survey, I may just write on the sketch page that survey number 1 is equivalent to the A survey. You can use any equivalency you want, but there's no way to use letters in PocketTopo. And so when you take the data later and want it, if you're going to use software like Compass or Walls, which are the programs that I typically use, you'll need to rename things, and I generally have to actually re-enter the data manually, which defeats some of the efficiency of having digital survey device. But there's no script that I'm aware of, or no conduit that allows you to export Topo Robot data into an application like Compass or Walls. So in PocketTopo there are a few menus, and to access those menus are down here at the bottom. The menu that we're in is the one on the left here, is basically the data table. And if you tap this again, there's a second data table which is for storing location information. So this is like east, north, and altitude. So this would be like GPS coordinates for an entrance or something like that. So some Pocket devices have GPS units built in, and you can record a location and then you can geolocate the rest of the cave survey. I generally don't ever use this. If I do geolocate stations or surveys, I generally do it in my desktop software. I don't bother doing it on the portable software, but this is a feature that's enabled in PocketTopo. If you tap that menu, that data menu again, it goes back to the main survey data table. Other tabs that are available are the data overview tab and then the sketch tab. In the data table, this plus and minus button don't do anything, but you have basically like a redo and undo button on the right hand side. So if you enter a data point that you don't want and make a mistake or something like that, you can always use the undo button to correct that. We'll go to the next tab, which is this sort of survey overview. Basically, it just shows you the overall line plot of the data you've collected, and you can zoom in and zoom out with the plus and minus buttons. So if you want to do that, and this displays the stations and so on. You can tap on one of these stations to select it. So I tapped on station 1.3. That gets highlighted down below, and then if you tap and hold, some options come up. These options at the bottom, you can hit this arrow to go back to the data table for that selected shot or station, and it'll highlight that so you can see where it is in the data table. So as you get to longer surveys, that may become useful for navigating. Other options, if you tap and hold, are to go to the outline or side view. Outline is another term for the plan view sketch, and side view is the profile view sketch. So if you want to go to where those are in the sketch page, you can select it there.